Welcome back to Dirty Laundry, the place where we do not just air the secrets, we deep clean. Everyone has a little something they want to hide, a stain they cannot quite wash out. But here we totally embrace the mess. We dive into the most scandalous stories, hidden truths, and ultimate unfiltered drama. Grab your popcorn, sit back, and get ready. Because today our cycle is about to spin out of control. Do not forget to hit that subscribe button before we uncover what is really in the basket. The judge looked at me and said the words I had been dreading. I was 76 years old, a Vietnam veteran, and the woman across the courtroom was wearing my dead wife's gold cross. She was smiling like she had already won. Mr. Mackenzie, please remain seated. We are about to begin. I sat. My knees did not want me to sit. My back did not want me to sit. The wooden bench beneath me was hard and unforgiving in the way that courthouse benches in the American South have always been hard and unforgiving, designed to remind a man that whatever he came in here to do, he is not as important as the room. I sat anyway. My granddaughter Lily was beside me on that bench, all of 7 years old, swinging her white sneakers an inch above the floor, holding a stuffed brown bear named Sergeant Buttons in the crook of her left arm. She squeezed my hand. Her small fingers were warm. Mine were not. Courtroom 3 of the Charleston County Probate Court is a long, narrow room with high ceilings and tall arched windows facing east toward Meeting Street. And on the morning of October the 22nd, 2024, those windows let in a pale yellow autumn light that fell across the wooden floor in slanted bars. I remember the light. I remember the way it caught the dust in the air. I remember the soft tick of the old brass wall clock above the judge's bench, which someone had wound that morning, and which read 9:15 exactly. I remember everything about that morning. I have to remember it. A man owes that much to the woman he buried 4 years before, and to the woman he was about to bury whatever was left of in a courtroom that smelled of furniture polish and stale coffee. Across the aisle, at the petitioner's table, sat my second wife. Her name was Christine Wayland. She was 38 years old. Chestnut hair pulled back in a soft, careful French twist. Cream-colored silk blouse, navy blue skirt, modest pearls. A small tear had been dabbed into the corner of her right eye, with the practiced touch of a woman who has rehearsed her sorrow in the bathroom mirror. Her hands were folded on the table in front of her, and around her neck, on a thin gold chain, hung the small gold cross my Margaret had worn for 47 years and had been buried in. Or so I had believed. I learned later, sitting on that bench, that Christine had taken the cross off Margaret's neck in the hospice room on the morning of November 9th, 2020, 22 minutes before the funeral home arrived. I had not known the cross was missing. I had not asked. A grieving widower does not check his dying wife's body for inventory. Christine's attorney, a sharp-boned woman in her early 40s named Patricia Holloway, was already on her feet at the podium with a yellow legal pad and a leather portfolio under her left arm. She wore a dark gray suit and a thin silver bracelet that caught the autumn light when she gestured. She was reputed to be the most aggressive guardianship attorney on the Charleston Peninsula. My own lawyer, Mr. Robert Chen, a 31-year veteran of the Charleston County Bar with kind brown eyes and a slight stoop in his shoulders, had warned me about her in his office back in August. Bob, he had said, she will come at you hard. She will try to break you in the first hour. You sit still. You let me do the work. You hold your granddaughter's hand. I was holding my granddaughter's hand. Behind Christine, in the third row of the gallery, sat a man I did not yet know by his full name. I knew him only as Christine's cousin Derek. He was 42 years old, dark-haired, in a gray suit that fit a shade too well for a man who had described himself to me at our first dinner as a part-time financial consultant. He was scrolling on his phone. He did not look up when I came in. He did not look up when Christine took her seat. He did not look up at all. Behind me, in the respondents' gallery, sat exactly 3 people. Mr. Chen's paralegal, a young woman named Miss Hollis, a retired Marine named Tom Henderson, my closest friend of 53 years, who had driven up from Goose Creek that morning in his pickup truck and parked outside the courthouse at 7 a.m., just so I would see his face when I walked in. And one empty seat, where my son Michael, a United States Army captain stationed at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, would have been sitting if the Army could have spared him. That was my whole army, a second wife at the petitioner's table, asking the court to declare me mentally unfit and grant her full guardianship of my person and my estate. Her attorney with a legal pad full of fabricated evidence. Her boyfriend in the gallery pretending to be her cousin. My granddaughter on the bench beside me holding a stuffed bear. My lawyer at my elbow. My oldest friend 2 rows back. And the slow, patient ticking of an old brass clock above the bench of a probate judge named the Honorable Walter Morrison. Lily leaned over. Her warm breath touched my ear. "Grandpa," she whispered. "4 words. Just listen for 4 words." I did not understand her. I would not understand her for another 6 hours. But I nodded. Because she had Margaret's eyes. And I had spent the last 4 years and 11 months learning that when a Mackenzie woman with Margaret's eyes tells you to listen, you listen. Judge Morrison adjusted his half-glasses. He looked down at the petition on his desk. He looked across the room at Christine. He looked at me. This is the matter of Waylon Mackenzie versus Mackenzie. Case number 2024-P-1147. The court is now in session. The brass clock ticked over to 9:17. And somewhere in my house on Sullivan's Island, 18 miles east of the courthouse, the coffee pot on the kitchen counter was still warm from the cup my wife had handed me that morning. 4 words. That is all she said. But those 4 words went through me like a current of electricity. And for the first time that morning, I felt something other than confusion. I felt something like hope. I turned slightly in my chair, just enough to look at her without drawing the judge's attention. Lily was sitting back now, her small hands folded on top of sergeant buttons, her face perfectly still. She looked, for all the world, like a child who had said nothing at all. But I had heard her. I had heard her. And I knew, in that moment, that something was happening in my granddaughter's mind that I did not yet understand. Patricia Holloway was still talking. She was reading from a document now, listing dates and times when I had supposedly forgotten things. The name of the bank teller I had known for 20 years. The location of my own truck in the parking lot at the Piggly Wiggly. The combination to the safe in my own garage. Some of those things were true. Some of them I remembered, vaguely. The way you remember a dream after you have been awake for an hour. But others were strangers to me. I did not recognize them at all. And that was what scared me the most. Sitting in that courtroom, in front of a judge and a room full of strangers, I could not be sure of my own memory. I could not be sure of my own mind. I am a man who built his own business with his own 2 hands. I crawled under 5,000 sinks and into 1,000 crawl spaces and never once forgot a fitting, never once mismeasured a pipe. I fixed Mrs. Beaumont's busted water heater on Christmas Eve in 1993 with a flashlight in my mouth and 3 inches of standing water around my boots. I knew my work the way a fisherman knows the tide. And now this woman, this lawyer with her thick blue folder, was telling a judge that I could not be trusted to turn off my own stove. I lowered my eyes to my hands. They were resting on the table in front of me. Big hands, thick fingers, 2 old scars across the knuckles from a wrench that slipped in 1986. A faded tattoo on the back of my left wrist from a tattoo parlor in Da Nang, the year I was 21. They were the hands of a man who had worked his whole life, and they were trembling. They had been trembling for months. I had blamed it on my age. I had blamed it on the cold. I had blamed it on too much coffee in the morning. Now, sitting in that courtroom, I felt a small, cold whisper at the back of my mind. A question I had not allowed myself to ask before. Why only the mornings? I did not have time to chase the thought. Patricia Holloway was finishing her opening statement. She turned and gestured toward Christine, who sat with her head bowed, dabbing at her eyes with a folded white handkerchief. And then Patricia turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I would like to call Mrs. Christine Mackenzie to the stand. Judge Morrison nodded. Mrs. Mackenzie, please come forward and be sworn in. Christine stood up slowly, the way a woman in mourning stands up. She smoothed her skirt. She tucked the handkerchief into her sleeve, and then she walked toward the witness chair, her low heels tapping softly on the wooden floor. That was when I saw her glance at Derek. It lasted less than a second. Most people in the room would not have noticed it. But I had spent 2 years living with these people, eating meals across from them, watching them on porches and in kitchens and in the front seat of my own truck. And I had never, in all that time, seen Christine look at Derek the way she looked at him in that moment. She did not look at him like a cousin. She did not look at him like family. She looked at him the way a soldier looks at his partner before they kick down a door together. Tight, focused, asking a question with her eyes. And Derek answered with the smallest nod of his head. A nod that said, "We are still on track." A nod that said, "Do not break now." I do not know if it was my imagination. I do not know if my mind, scrambled by whatever was happening to me, was inventing meaning where there was none. But for one long second, sitting in that wooden chair with my granddaughter behind me and my whole life on a piece of paper in front of a judge, I felt something I had not felt since the day I came home from Vietnam. I felt the back of my neck go cold, and I knew, without proof, without evidence, without a single thing I could have explained to anyone, I knew. Something was very, very wrong. I felt Lily shift behind me again. Her small hand reached forward through the gap in the wooden railing and touched the back of my arm. Just one tap. 2 fingers. Light as a leaf. I did not turn around. I knew better now. Whatever Lily was doing, whatever she was waiting for, she did not want anyone else in that courtroom to know she was doing it. So I sat very still, and I let my hand drift down to the side of my chair, and I felt the smallest squeeze on my wrist. A squeeze from a hand so small it could fit inside my palm twice, and then, almost too softly to hear, she said one more thing. "Sergeant Buttons knows. He will help us soon." I did not understand what she meant. I did not understand how a stuffed bear could help anyone. But I sat very still, and I waited, because for the first time in 2 years, I was no longer alone in that courtroom. My granddaughter was with me, and whatever was about to happen, she had been preparing for it longer than I had ever known. Christine reached the witness stand. She placed her right hand on the Bible, and she swore, in a voice soft and broken and absolutely convincing, to tell the whole truth. The thing about a good lie is that it sounds nothing like a lie. It sounds like the truth has put on a clean dress and combed its hair. And as I sat in that courtroom watching my wife take the oath, I realized I was about to hear the best lie of my life. Christine settled into the witness chair the way a woman settles into a pew at a funeral. Her shoulders were soft. Her chin was tilted just slightly down. She kept the handkerchief in her left hand, folded neat as a napkin at a church supper. She did not look at me. She did not look at Derek. She looked only at Judge Morrison, with the kind of brave, broken expression that you cannot fake unless you have been practicing in a mirror. Patricia Holloway approached the stand. Her voice softened. It was the voice of a friend now, not a lawyer. A voice meant to make the courtroom forget she was there at all. Mrs. Mackenzie, can you tell the court how long you have been married to the petitioner, Robert Mackenzie? 2 years and 1 month, Christine said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. We were married in September of 2022. And how would you describe your marriage in those first months? Christine drew in a slow breath. She let it out the way a tired woman lets out a sigh at the end of a long day. It was beautiful. Bob was kind and gentle, and he made me feel safe. He had lost his first wife, Margaret, the year before, and I had lost both of my parents within 18 months of each other. We were two broken people who found each other at the right time. Or so I thought. I felt something shift behind my ribs. Two broken people. The phrase was almost the exact phrase she had used to me on the porch of my house on Sullivan's Island, the night I asked her to marry me. I had thought she was being honest then. Now I understood she had been quoting from a script she had already written. Patricia nodded gently. And when did you first begin to notice changes in Mr. Mackenzie's behavior? About 6 months after the wedding. A small, careful pause. Just long enough to make the judge lean forward. At first, Christine said, it was little things. He would forget where he had put his glasses. He would call me by his first wife's name. I told myself that was normal, especially for a man who had just lost the love of his life. But then it got worse. He started waking up in the middle of the night, confused about where he was. He started leaving the stove on. He started misplacing his wallet, sometimes for days at a time, and accusing me of hiding it from him. Patricia tilted her head. Accusing you? Yes. Christine pressed the handkerchief lightly to her cheek. There were times when Bob would become very angry. He would say I was stealing from him. He would say I was trying to take his money. It was not him. I knew it was not him. The Bob I married would never have said those things. But the disease, whatever it was taking him from me piece by piece. I sat very still. I did not move. I did not breathe more than I had to. Because the woman on that witness stand was describing a man I had never been. Not once. In 2 years of marriage, had I ever accused her of stealing from me. Not once had I ever raised my voice at her about money. The only times I had ever spoken about money with Christine were the times she had asked me about my retirement account, my mortgage, my life insurance policy. and I had answered every question patiently, because she was my wife, and a husband does not keep secrets from his wife. But who, in that courtroom, was going to believe me over her? She was crying. She was small and soft and grieving, and I was sitting at the other table with hands that shook and a memory I could not trust. Patricia walked back to her folder. She turned a page. Mrs. Mackenzie, would you describe for the court the incident with the stove? The one from 3 weeks ago. Christine closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, there were tears clinging to her lower lashes. It was a Wednesday night. I had run to the pharmacy to pick up Bob's blood pressure medication. I was gone for maybe 25 minutes. When I came back, there was smoke in the kitchen. The front left burner on the gas stove was turned all the way to high, and a plastic cutting board had been left on top of it. The board was melting. The whole house smelled like burning plastic and gas. I screamed for Bob. I found him in the living room, watching television. He looked up at me and said, "What is wrong?" "Honey." He did not even smell the smoke. A murmur went through the gallery. I heard someone whisper, "Oh my God." "What did you do then?" Patricia asked. I turned off the stove. I opened every window in the house. And then I called the fire department, because the smoke detector was already going off, and I was afraid the wiring in the wall might have caught. They came. They wrote a report. I have a copy of that report with me today. Patricia took the paper from Christine's hand and entered it into evidence. Judge Morrison studied it for a long moment. I tried to remember. I tried so hard. A Wednesday, 3 weeks ago. The pharmacy. Christine had gone to the pharmacy. I had been watching the evening news. That much I knew. I always watched the evening news, but the stove, the cutting board, the smell of burning plastic, none of it was there. None of it lived in my mind. There was the news, and then there was Christine standing in the kitchen with her hand over her mouth, telling me what I had done. I felt Lily lean forward again. Her hand did not touch me this time, but I could feel her there, steady and close. The way you feel a friend in the dark. Patricia turned a final page in her folder. Mrs. Mackenzie, one last question. After that night, what did you decide? Christine looked at the judge. Her voice broke just a little, exactly the right amount. I decided that I love my husband too much to let him hurt himself, or someone else. That is why we are here today. Not because I want anything from him, but because he needs help. And I cannot give it to him alone anymore. The courtroom went perfectly quiet. Even the air seemed to hold still. And in that silence, I understood, for the first time, just how good this lie was going to be. A man can survive almost anything in this life if he keeps his memory. Take away his health, he will adapt. Take away his money, he will start over. Take away his pride, he will find a quieter kind. But take away a man's memory, and you have taken everything. Because without his memory, he cannot trust his own story. And without his story, he is not really a man at all. He is just a body sitting in a chair, waiting for someone else to tell him who he is. That was what was happening to me in that courtroom. Right there, in front of God and Judge Morrison, and a granddaughter who weighed less than a sack of feed. Christine was taking my story away from me, one careful sentence at a time. And I could feel myself starting to disappear. Patricia Holloway gave Christine a small nod. Then she turned the page in her folder and began the second half of the testimony. The half that was designed to finish me off. Mrs. Mackenzie, can you describe a few other incidents from this past year? Not just the stove. The court needs to understand the full pattern. Christine drew in another careful breath. And then, with the patience of a woman reading a grocery list, she began to recite my failings. There was the time, she said, when I had driven to the bait shop on Shem Creek to pick up a bucket of mud minnows for a Saturday morning fishing trip with Tom Henderson. And I had come back 4 hours later with no minnows, no memory of going, and a parking ticket from a lot in West Ashley that I had no recollection of visiting. There was the afternoon when our neighbor, Mrs. Edna Caraway, had found me standing in her front yard in my bathrobe, holding a wrench and asking her where the main shutoff valve was. I had been her plumber for 30 years. I had installed her own shutoff valve in 1994. Christine said Mrs. Caraway had cried on the phone when she called to tell her about it. There was the evening when I had supposedly walked into the bedroom while Christine was changing, did not recognize her, and asked her, very politely, if she was the new home health aide. Christine said she had laughed at first, and then she had gone into the bathroom and locked the door and cried for an hour. Each story landed like a small stone on top of the last one, until there was a pile of stones on my chest, and I could not breathe under the weight of them. Some of those stories were complete inventions. I knew that. The bathrobe and Mrs. Caraway, the home health aide, those had never happened. I would have remembered. But some of them, God help me, had happened. The bait shop, the parking ticket. I did remember pieces of that day, pieces that did not connect. I remembered getting in the truck. I remembered the smell of low tide along Shem Creek. And then I remembered, hours later, sitting in my truck in a parking lot I did not recognize, with no minnows in the cooler and the sun already low in the sky. How do you defend yourself against a story that is half true and half false, when you cannot tell which half is which? Patricia Holloway turned to her last witness of the morning. Your Honor, the petitioner would like to call Dr. Patricia Holloway of the Charleston Memory Clinic, no relation, to present the results of Mr. Mackenzie's neurological evaluation. A woman in a dark gray suit stood up from the second row of the gallery. She had silver hair, a thin face, and a confident walk. Robert Chen, sitting next to me, finally spoke. He half stood at our table. Your Honor, I would like to note for the record that we received Dr. Holloway's evaluation only 72 hours ago. We have not had adequate time to obtain a second opinion. Judge Morrison looked over her glasses. Noted. Mr. Chen, you may cross-examine her after direct. Dr. Holloway took the stand and was sworn in. Patricia walked her through a slow, careful summary of her findings. Cognitive testing showed declines in short-term memory. Spatial reasoning was impaired. There were signs, she said, of mild vascular changes in the brain, consistent with small strokes that I might not have noticed when they happened. She used phrases like progressive deterioration and quality of life concerns and not safe to live independently. She spoke softly, kindly, the way a doctor speaks when she is delivering bad news to a family she likes. The only problem was, she had never actually examined me. I had gone to the Charleston Memory Clinic. Yes, Christine had driven me there one Monday morning in September, after I had supposedly forgotten to pick her up from a hair appointment. The visit had lasted 19 minutes. A nurse had taken my blood pressure. A young man had asked me to draw a clock face. I had drawn it. The numbers were a little uneven. He had thanked me and sent me home. I had never met Dr. Holloway, Not once. Her name had not been on the door. Her face had not been in that room. I leaned over to Robert Chen and whispered this to him. His eyes went very still. He wrote something on his yellow pad, underlined it twice, and gave me a small nod. While Patricia continued her questions, I felt the smallest pressure on my back. Lily was leaning against the railing behind me, the way a tired child leans against her grandfather in church. She did not whisper this time. She did not move at all. She just leaned. And in that small touch I felt her tell me, without a word, that she was still there, still waiting, still ready. At 11:38, Judge Morrison removed her glasses, looked at the clock on the back wall, and tapped her gavel one time. The sound went through the courtroom like a small thunderclap. High Court will be in recess for 30 minutes. We will resume at 12:15. Counsel, be prepared. Everyone stood. Patricia Holloway gathered her papers with the satisfied calm of a woman who knew she was winning. Christine stepped down from the stand and walked back to her table without looking at me. Derek did not move from his seat in the second row. He just watched. The way a man watches a clock when he is waiting for something he already knows is coming. I pushed back from the petitioner's table. My legs were stiff. My hands would not quite stop shaking. I turned, looking for Lily. She was already standing, sergeant buttons under her arm, her brown eyes calm and very, very awake. Grandpa, she said softly. Come with me to the hallway. I want to show you something. The hallway outside courtroom 3 had a long wooden bench against the wall, the kind of bench they put in courthouses to remind a man that whatever he is waiting for, he will be waiting for it a while. Lily climbed up beside me and let her feet dangle. I sat with my hands on my knees and stared at the marble floor. The floor was the color of dirty cream, with little gray veins running through it. And somebody had buffed it that morning so I could see the dim, wavy reflection of my own work boots looking back up at me. A bailiff walked by with 2 paper cups of coffee. The smell of it hit me, and my stomach turned over the way a tire turns over on a cold morning. I had not been able to drink coffee in the courthouse cafeteria. Mr. Chen had warned me not to. Anything that came in a cup somebody else had handled. He said, "We leave alone until this is done." I had brought a thermos of water from home, filled at the tap, sealed since 6 in the morning, and I sipped from it slow. Lily slipped her small hand into mine. "Grandpa," she said, "look out the window, the pretty one, with the tree." I looked. There was a tall, arched window at the end of the hallway, and through it I could see a single live oak in the courtyard, draped in Spanish moss, lit yellow by the late morning sun. A mockingbird sat on the lowest branch and turned his head one way and then the other. The hallway went away from me. I was 23 years old. It was the spring of 1971. And I had been home from Da Nang for 6 weeks. I had walked off the plane at Charleston Air Force Base in my Marine Corps dress blues, with a bronze star in my breast pocket and a duffel bag over my shoulder, and nothing in my head except the wish to be in a quiet room with my mother's biscuits on a plate in front of me. I had spent 13 months in country with Marine Air Group 16. I had buried 3 friends. I had not slept a full night in over a year. I was a thin, sharp, brown-skinned young man with a haircut you could set a square against. And I had no idea what I was going to do with the rest of my life. My mother dragged me to church the second Sunday I was home. St. Michael's Episcopal, on the corner of Broad and Meeting, the same church my grandfather had been baptized in 1904. I sat in the third pew on the left side and tried to remember the words to the Apostles' Creed, and could not. My mother sang for both of us. After the service, there was a coffee hour in the parish hall. I did not want coffee. I wanted to go home. My mother put her hand on my elbow and said, "Robert, you are going to be polite for 15 minutes." So I stood with a paper cup of coffee I was not drinking, and I nodded at old men who shook my hand and thanked me for my service in the careful, half-embarrassed way Americans thanked Vietnam veterans in 1971. And then I saw her. She was standing by the window, holding a plate of butter cookies, talking to old Mrs. Pinckney. She was 22 years old. She wore a pale yellow dress with small white flowers on it. Her hair was the color of dark honey, pulled back with a tortoiseshell clip. She had a small spray of freckles across the bridge of her nose, the kind of freckles a southern girl gets from summers spent on the water. And when she laughed at something Mrs. Pinckney said, she laughed with her whole face. I forgot, in that moment, that I had ever been in a rice paddy. Her name was Margaret Ann Calhoun. Her people were from Walterboro. She had finished 2 years at Winthrop College and come home to teach third grade at Mitchell Elementary. She liked Patsy Cline, fried okra, and the smell of orange blossoms. She did not like loud men, fast cars, or people who interrupted other people in conversation. I learned all of this in the first hour I spoke to her, standing by the window of the parish hall with a paper cup of cold coffee in my hand. We married on the 18th of October, 1971, 6 months and 3 days after that coffee hour. She was 22. I was 23. The ceremony was at St. Michael's. 28 guests. White roses because the orange blossoms were out of season. My best man was a Marine named Tommy Reyes, who had served with me at Da Nang, and Margaret's maid of honor was her younger sister Caroline, who would die of breast cancer in 1996, and whom Margaret would mourn for the rest of her life. The early years were lean. I went to work for a plumbing outfit on King Street in 1972, making $2.40 an hour, learning the trade from a man named Earl Beaufan, who taught me everything I know about copper, brass, and the patience required to find a leak inside a wall. By 1980, I had my master's license. By 1984, Margaret and I had saved enough to start Mackenzie Plumbing out of a rented garage on Coleman Boulevard. I painted the name on the side of a used Ford F-150 by hand, with a stencil and a can of black enamel that cost 85 cents. Margaret kept the books at the kitchen table after the supper dishes were done, with the radio playing low and the cicadas singing outside the screen door. Our son Michael was born on the 4th of June, 1986. I was 38 years old. I held him in the hospital nursery and cried for the first time since I had come home from the war. In 1990, we bought the house on Sullivan's Island, 3 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, 140 feet of marsh frontage looking east toward the rising sun. Margaret stood on that porch the day we closed, with the wind moving her honey-colored hair, and she said, "Bob Mackenzie, I am going to die in this house." I told her not to be morbid. She told me she was being practical. She was right. She had always been right. The summer of 2020, she started losing weight. By September, she was at Roper St. Francis, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Dr. Patel said 9 months to a year, maybe a little more if she was strong, and Margaret had always been strong. She did not get 9 months. A small, warm hand squeezed my own. Grandpa, you went somewhere. I came back to the hallway, to the marble floor, to my own work boots looking up at me from the dim reflection, to my granddaughter, swinging her feet on the bench beside me. The mockingbird outside the window had flown. The Spanish moss was very still. The sun had moved a quarter of an inch across the live oak. Yes, baby, I said. I went somewhere. A long time ago. She nodded the way she always nodded, the way a small wise person nods at a piece of news she has already understood. Grandma was there, she said. Wasn't she? I looked down at her. Her dark eyes were very calm. Yes, baby, I said. Grandma was there. The bailiff opened the courtroom door and called my name. The hallway window had a smudge on it, right at eye level, shaped almost like a thumbprint. I stared at that smudge for a long time. It was easier than looking at my granddaughter, easier than looking at the courtroom door, easier than looking at the truth of what my life had become. Lily sat beside me, swinging her legs, her white sneakers brushing the bench leg with a soft, steady rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. Like a clock, like a heartbeat. Like the drip of an IV bag I had watched for 92 days in the autumn of 2020. That sound brought me back to the hospice room, Roper St. Francis Hospital, 4th floor, room 417. The window faced east, so the morning light came in soft and yellow, the kind of light Margaret used to call church light. She loved that light. Even at the end, when her body weighed 89 pounds and her cheeks had hollowed out like a carved gourd, she would ask me to open the blinds at sunrise. Bob, honey, she would whisper, her voice like dry leaves. Let the good Lord in. And I would open the blinds, and I would sit in the green vinyl chair beside her bed, and I would hold her hand. Her hand had become a small bird in mine. I remember the bones of her knuckles, the loose gold of her wedding ring spinning on a finger too thin to hold it. I held that ring in place with a piece of medical tape. She laughed when I did it. It was the last real laugh I ever heard from her. The hospice nurses were kind. There was one in particular, a heavy-set black woman named Denise, who would come in at 6 in the morning and hum old gospel songs while she changed Margaret's sheets. Denise had hands like my mother's, strong and certain, and she never once made Margaret feel like a body. She made her feel like a person. I sent Denise a Christmas card every year after Margaret passed. I still do. But there was another woman who came to that hospice, a volunteer. A young woman with chestnut hair pulled back in a neat ponytail and a name tag that read, Christine in blue marker. She came in the second week of October, 2020. She wore a soft pink cardigan and carried a basket of homemade lavender sachets she said she made herself. She had the kindest eyes I had ever seen on a stranger. Pale green, like sea glass. She knelt beside Margaret's bed, and she held Margaret's hand, and she sang to her. Quiet hymns. Amazing grace. In the garden. The old rugged cross. Margaret cried. I cried. Christine cried. We were 3 broken people in a room full of yellow light. And I thought, in that moment, that God had sent us an angel. I thought wrong. But I did not know that then. How could I have known she came back the next day, and the next, and the next? She brought soup in a mason jar. She brought a hand-knitted blanket the color of cream. She read to Margaret from a worn copy of the 23rd Psalm, her voice low and steady, and Margaret would close her eyes and smile that thin, papery smile of hers. One afternoon, Margaret looked up at me and squeezed my hand and said, "Bob, that girl is a blessing. You make sure she knows that." I promised I would. I did not understand, then, what Margaret had really seen. I think now, sitting in that courthouse hallway 49 years after I married her, that Margaret had seen something else. Margaret had seen the way Christine looked at our house through the hospice window. Margaret had seen the way Christine asked questions about the business, about the savings, about Michael, about whether Bob had a will. Margaret had seen, in those last weeks when the morphine made the rest of us sleepy and slow, what a dying woman with nothing left to lose can sometimes see clear as daylight. And Margaret had done something about it. I just did not know yet. Margaret passed on November 9th, 2020, at 6:42 in the morning. The church light was just coming through the blinds. I was holding her hand. Denise was humming. Christine was standing in the corner with her head bowed and her hands folded. And when Margaret's last breath went out of her, Christine looked up at me, and there was a flicker behind those sea-glass eyes. Just a flicker. Like a curtain pulled back for half a second, and then dropped again. I did not see it then. I see it now. Christine came to the funeral. She wore a black dress and stood in the back of St. Michael's and held a single white rose. She came to the reception at our house, and she helped Denise's daughter set out the casseroles. She washed dishes in our kitchen. She wiped down the counter where Margaret used to roll out biscuit dough. She introduced herself to Michael as a friend from the hospice. Michael shook her hand and thanked her for being there for his mother. Michael liked her right away, 6 months later. She was in my kitchen on Tuesday afternoons, bringing me casseroles. 8 months later, she had a toothbrush in my bathroom. A year after that, she was my wife. And 3 years after the wedding, she was in a courtroom in Charleston County trying to convince a judge that I no longer knew my own name. There was something else, too. Something I had not thought about in years. There was a man down the hall from Margaret. Room 421. A widower from Goose Creek named Mr. Earl Whitfield, 81 years old. Lung cancer. His daughter lived in Atlanta and could only come down on weekends. I used to see him in the day room on the long afternoons when Margaret was sleeping. He would be in his wheelchair by the window with a paperback Louis L'Amour on his lap. And we would nod at each other the way old men nod. Two veterans of two different wars sharing the same long hallway. One afternoon in late October, 2020, I walked past his open door, and Christine was sitting in the chair beside his bed. She was holding his hand. She was singing to him. The same hymn. Amazing Grace. The same low, sweet voice she had used on Margaret. And Mr. Whitfield was looking at her with the same grateful, broken expression I knew was on my own face every morning. I had thought, at the time, what a saint that girl is. Spreading her kindness all over the floor. I see it now for what it was. A predator working a hunting ground. The bench creaked beneath me. Lily had stopped swinging her legs. She was looking at me with those serious dark eyes, the eyes she got from Margaret, and she reached up and touched my cheek with one small finger. There was a tear there. I had not known I was crying. "Grandpa," she whispered. "Grandma told me about her. Grandma told me a long time ago." The hallway tilted. The smudge on the window blurred. My heart began to pound, slow and hard, like a fist on a wooden door. "Lily," I said, "what did Grandma tell you?" And then the bailiff opened the courtroom door. The bailiff's voice was flat and tired. "Court's back in session. Y'all need to come on in." I stood up too fast, and the hallway tilted again. And for a moment I had to put my hand on the bench to steady myself. Lily slipped her small hand into mine. She did not say another word about Margaret. She did not have to. The 4 words she had spoken, Grandma told me about her, had lodged themselves in my chest like a fishhook, and every breath I took pulled on the line. We walked back into courtroom 3 together. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, that low electric drone that always reminded me of the lights in the supply tent at Marine Air Group 16, Da Nang, the autumn of 1969. Funny. The things a man's mind reaches for when it is trying not to drown. Christine was already seated at the petitioner's table. She had touched up her lipstick during the break, a soft coral pink. She had reapplied a little powder under her eyes, too. I noticed it because the powder did not quite cover the redness, and the redness did not quite look like real tears. It looked like a woman who had been rubbing her eyes with her knuckles in the ladies' room. There is a difference. 53 years of marriage to a woman who actually cried had taught me the difference. Derek sat 2 rows behind her, in the 3rd row of the gallery, with his ankle crossed over his knee and his phone in his hand. He was scrolling. He looked up when we walked in, and for half a second his eyes met mine, and I saw something I had never seen in him before. Boredom. Bored. Like a man waiting for a transaction to close. Bored. Like a man who already knew how this was going to end. My lawyer, Mr. Robert Chen, leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Bob, my turn now. I'm going to cross her. You stay quiet. You hear me no matter what she says. You stay quiet. Squeeze Lily's hand if you need to, but do not speak." Understood. I nodded. I sat down. I squeezed Lily's hand, and she squeezed back. Mr. Chen rose. He buttoned his suit coat the way my own father used to button his Sunday jacket before Mass. Slow and deliberate, like the buttoning itself was a kind of prayer. Then he walked to the podium with a yellow legal pad and a single pen. And he looked at Christine with the patient eyes of a man who has spent 31 years in courtrooms watching people lie. "Mrs. Mackenzie," he said. "Good afternoon." "Good afternoon, Mr. Chen." Ma'am. You testified this morning that you first met my client in October of 2020 at Roper St. Francis Hospice. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir." "And you were there as a volunteer with an organization called Carolina Comfort Companions. Is that correct?" A small pause, just a beat too long. "Yes, sir." Mr. Chen turned a page on his legal pad. "Mrs. Mackenzie, I have here a letter from the executive director of Carolina Comfort Companions, dated September of this year. The director's name is Mrs. Eleanor Babcock. Are you familiar with Mrs. Babcock?" Christine's jaw tightened. Just a flicker. The same flicker I had seen in her eyes the morning Margaret died. I knew her. Yes, Mrs. Babcock writes, and I quote, Christine Wayland volunteered with our organization for a period of approximately 11 weeks in the autumn of 2020. Her volunteer privileges were revoked on November the 21st of that year, following an internal review concerning her professional boundaries with a patient and that patient's family. End quote. The courtroom went very quiet. I could hear the air conditioner cycle on. Patricia Holloway shot up like a jack-in-the-box. Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. This letter has not been authenticated, and the witness has had no opportunity to review it. Judge Morrison looked over his half-glasses. Mr. Chen. Your Honor. The letter is notarized and accompanied by a sworn affidavit from Mrs. Babcock. I am happy to provide opposing counsel a copy right now. I am also prepared to call Mrs. Babcock as a witness this afternoon. She is in the witness room down the hall. The judge nodded once. Overruled. Witness will answer the question. Mr. Chen turned back to Christine. Mrs. Mackenzie, were your volunteer privileges revoked in November of 2020? Christine's hand went to her throat. She touched the little gold cross she always wore. The same cross. I realized with a sick lurch that Margaret had been buried in Margaret's cross. I had given it to Christine on our wedding day because Christine had said she had always admired it. I had thought it was a gesture of love. I see now it was a trophy. Yes, sir, Christine said. Her voice had lost some of its honey. But it was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Mr. Chen repeated. He let the words sit there. Mrs. Mackenzie, isn't it true that you began a personal relationship with my client, Mr. Robert Mackenzie, while his wife, Mrs. Margaret Mackenzie, was still alive and under hospice care? No, sir, absolutely not. You did not visit Mr. Mackenzie at his home on Sullivan's Island in October of 2020, while Mrs. Mackenzie was in the hospital. I brought him a casserole one time. That was all. One time. Yes, sir. Mr. Chen turned another page. Mrs. Mackenzie, I have here the visitor log from the security gate at the Sullivan's Island community, where Mr. Mackenzie resides. Between October the 14th and November the 8th of 2020, your vehicle, a 2017 silver Honda Civic, license plate Hotel Charlie Romeo 42AT, was logged into that community on 17 separate occasions. Christine did not answer. 17 times, ma'am. In 25 days. While Mrs. Mackenzie was dying, Patricia Holloway started to rise again, and the judge held up one finger without looking at her. She sat back down, beside me. Lily slid off her chair. Just an inch. Just enough that I felt her weight shift. She leaned toward me, and her warm breath touched my ear, and she whispered something I will remember on the day I die. Grandpa, it's time. Can I get Sergeant Buttons from the bag now? I did not answer Lily right away. I could not. My throat had closed up like a rusted valve. Mr. Chen was still standing at the podium, still pressing Christine on those 17 visits, and Patricia Holloway was scribbling on her legal pad so hard I could hear the pen scratch from where I sat. The courtroom felt smaller than it had an hour ago. The walls felt closer. The fluorescent hum felt louder. Sergeant Buttons, the teddy bear. Lily had brought him into court that morning in a little pink canvas bag with white daisies stitched on the side. The bag Margaret had sewn for her the Christmas before she passed. I had not thought twice about it. A child brings a stuffed animal to a scary place. That is what children do. That is all I had seen. I leaned down and whispered, "Not yet, sweetheart. Wait for Mr. Chen to tell us when." She nodded. She sat back. She put both her hands flat on her lap like a little soldier at attention, and she watched Christine the way a barn cat watches a sparrow. And while she watched Christine, I started watching the inside of my own head. It is a strange thing, what a man's mind will do when the floor finally tilts beneath him. Mine started sorting, like a card sharp shuffling a deck. Memories I had not given a second thought to in months suddenly began to land face up on the table, one after the other. And the picture they made was not a picture I wanted to see. The coffee, that was the first card. Christine had started making my morning coffee in February of 2023. I remember because Michael had given me a fancy espresso machine for Christmas the month before. One of those Italian things with chrome levers and a steam wand, and I could not figure out how to work it to save my life. Christine had laughed and said, "Honey, you let me handle that. You just sit and read your paper." So I did. Every morning at 6:30, she would bring me a heavy white mug, black coffee, 1 sugar, always the same, and I would drink it on the back porch and watch the herons come up off the marsh. By April of that year, I was forgetting things, small things at first. Where I had put my reading glasses, whether I had taken the trash out, the name of the new cashier at the Harris Teeter. Christine would smile and pat my hand and say, "Bob, honey, that's just your age catching up with you. It happens to all of us." And I believed her, because I was 75 years old, and that is what 75-year-old men are supposed to do. We are supposed to forget. We are supposed to slow down. We are supposed to need a younger woman to remind us what day of the week it is. But here is the thing. I never forgot anything on the weekends. I had not put that together until that very moment. Sitting in courtroom 3 with my granddaughter's hand on my knee. Saturday and Sunday mornings. Christine slept in. She did not make coffee. I made my own. I used the old percolator on the back of the stove, the one Margaret and I had bought at a yard sale in 1979. And I drank that coffee on the back porch and watched the same herons. And on Saturday and Sunday afternoons, my head was clear as a bell. I could remember the names of every Marine in my squad. I could recite the prices of every fitting at the supply house. I could do the crossword puzzle in the Post and Courier in 12 minutes flat. Monday morning, Christine would hand me my mug, and by lunchtime I could not remember whether I had eaten breakfast. I had blamed the work week. I had blamed stress. I had blamed the natural decline of a man whose wife had died and whose body was wearing out. I had blamed everything except the woman who poured the coffee. The second card landed. Pharmacy runs. Christine drove to the CVS on Coleman Boulevard at least twice a week. She said she had migraines. She said she had trouble sleeping. She said her thyroid medication kept getting reformulated, and she had to keep going back. I had never once looked at a receipt. I had never once asked to see a prescription bottle. I had given her a debit card to our joint account in the spring of 2022, and I had never once questioned a single charge. The third card, the bathroom cabinet. Margaret had kept a row of brown plastic prescription bottles on the second shelf of the master bathroom medicine cabinet during her last year. Pain medication, anti-nausea pills, sleep aids, anti-anxiety pills the hospice doctor had prescribed for the bad nights. After Margaret passed, I had meant to take them all to the police drop box at the Mount Pleasant station, the way Denise, the hospice nurse, had told me to. I had meant to. But grief is a thief of small intentions, and 3 weeks turned into 3 months. And then Christine moved in. And one afternoon, I noticed that the shelf was empty. I had asked her about it. She had said, "Oh, Bob, I took care of it. I dropped them off at the pharmacy. You had enough to worry about, honey." She had not dropped them off. I knew that now the way a man knows when a storm is coming in over the Atlantic. He does not need the radio to tell him. He feels it in his bones. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling. Not bad. Just a slow, steady tremor in the fingertips. I had been telling myself for a year that it was Parkinson's coming on. Just the slow drumbeat of old age. It was not old age. It was a chemical. And the woman sitting 20 feet away from me, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue, had been feeding it to me one black coffee at a time. Lily squeezed my knee. "Grandpa," she whispered, "you look like you just figured something out." "Yes, baby," I said. My voice came out lower than I meant it to. "I believe I did." Mr. Chen was still working on Christine at the podium. He had moved on from the visitor logs to the question of when. Exactly. She had introduced herself to Michael, and Christine was giving short, careful answers now. The honey was gone from her voice. What was left was something flatter, harder. The voice of a woman who has realized she is in deeper water than she expected and is trying not to splash. I was not listening to her anymore. I was listening to my own blood. There is a particular sound a man hears, late at night, when he is the last one awake in a quiet house. It is the sound of his own pulse in his ears. Steady, patient. A drumbeat that has been keeping time since the day he was born, and will keep time until the day he is not. I was hearing that drum now, in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, in courtroom 3 of the Charleston County Probate Court. My own heart, ticking out the seconds, telling me that the woman I had married 3 years and 4 months ago had been killing me by inches, killing me. I let the word sit there in my head. I turned it over the way a man turns a strange coin in his pocket. Killing me. It did not feel like a word that belonged to my life. It belonged to the evening news. It belonged to the paperback novels Margaret used to read on the back porch in the summer. It did not belong to a retired plumber from Sullivan's Island who had voted in every election since 1970 and paid his taxes on time every April, and yet there it was, killing me. Lily was watching me. I could feel her watching me without turning my head. She had that quiet kind of attention Margaret used to have, the kind that does not push. It just waits. After a long moment, she leaned in and her warm breath touched my ear again. And she asked me the question that would change the rest of my life. "Grandpa," she whispered, "do you trust her?" It was such a small question. 4 small words. The same number of words she had whispered to me earlier in the morning. "Don't believe her." And then later, Sergeant Button's nose. And then later still. Grandma told me about her. It was as if my granddaughter had been feeding me a sentence one piece at a time, all morning long. The way you feed a starving man one spoonful at a time so you do not shock his stomach. I turned my head and looked at her. Really looked at her. Her dark hair was pulled back in a French braid that Christine had done that morning at the breakfast table, and there was a small piece coming loose at her temple. a wisp of hair that curled the way Margaret's used to curl in the humidity. Her eyes were dark and steady and 7 years old and 100 years old all at once. "No, baby," I whispered back. "I don't." Not anymore. Something in her shoulders eased. I had not realized how tight she had been holding herself until I saw her let go of it. She let out a small breath. Then she nodded once, the way a soldier nods when an order has finally been confirmed. And she reached down and pulled the pink canvas bag with the white daisies up onto her lap. She did not open it. Not yet. She just held it. She held it the way a person holds a Bible at a funeral, with both hands. Flat against her knees, Mr. Chen finished his cross. He thanked Christine in that polite Southern way that lawyers use when they have just cut a witness off at the ankles. And he walked back to our table and sat down beside me. He did not look at me. He poured himself a glass of water from the pitcher and took a long, slow drink. Then, under the table, where the judge could not see, he reached over and placed his hand on my forearm. Just for a second. A small squeeze. A signal between two old men who had each, in their own way, spent a lifetime watching other people lie. Judge Morrison looked at his watch. "Mr. Chen, the petitioner has rested for now. We've got about an hour before I'm going to need to call a recess for the day. Are you prepared to begin your case in chief, or would you prefer to start fresh tomorrow morning?" Mr. Chen stood up slowly. He buttoned his suit coat again. He looked at me, and I looked back at him, and a great deal of conversation passed between us in the space of 2 seconds. "Your Honor," he said, "the respondent is prepared to proceed. We have an hour. I believe we can use it well." "Very well. Call your first witness." Mr. Chen turned toward the gallery. I expected him to call Mrs. Babcock, the woman from Carolina Comfort Companions who was waiting in the witness room. I expected him to call the security guard from the Sullivan's Island gate. I expected him to call the pharmacist from the CVS on Coleman Boulevard. Any of those would have been a fine, ordinary, lawyerly next move. He did not. He looked at Judge Morrison, and his voice was very quiet. But in that courtroom it sounded like the slow opening of a door that had been locked for a long time. "Your Honor, the respondent would like to call Miss Lily Margaret Mackenzie to the stand." The courtroom did not gasp. It did something quieter than that. It went still. The kind of stillness that comes into a room when a hawk's shadow passes over a yard full of small birds. Patricia Holloway's pen stopped scratching. Christine's head came up. Derek looked up from his phone. Lily slid off her chair. The pink canvas bag was in her hand. Sergeant Buttons was inside it. And inside Sergeant Buttons was a small black plastic rectangle no bigger than a stick of chewing gum. And inside that rectangle were 18 months of recordings. She looked up at me. She was not afraid. "It's all right, Grandpa," she whispered. "Grandma helped me practice." She walked toward the front of the courtroom, the way Margaret used to walk down the aisle at St. Michael's. Small steps. Steady. Her chin up. Her shoulders square. She was wearing her best church dress, the navy blue one with the white lace collar that Margaret had bought her for Easter 2 years ago. And her black Mary Jane shoes made a soft click on the wooden floor with every step. The pink canvas bag swung gently from her left hand. Sergeant Buttons rode inside it like a soldier in a transport. The whole courtroom watched her. Christine watched her. Derek watched her. Patricia Holloway watched her with the expression of a woman who has just realized the parking brake is off and the car is rolling. Judge Morrison watched her too, but his watching was different. There was a softness in his eyes I had not seen all morning. He had grandchildren. I would find out later. 3 of them. The youngest was 7, the same age as Lily. The bailiff brought a small wooden step stool to the witness box so she could climb up. He did it without being asked. He set it down quiet and careful, the way a man sets down something he does not want to wake. Lily climbed up. She set the pink bag on her lap. She folded her hands on top of the bag, on top of Sergeant Button's, on top of the small black rectangle that was about to change the next 20 years of my life. The court clerk approached with the Bible. She was a heavy-set woman with kind brown eyes and a name tag that read, Mrs. Price. She held the Bible out at Lily's eye level and said, in a voice gentled down for a child, Sweetheart, do you know what it means to swear to tell the truth? Lily nodded. Yes, ma'am. It means if I tell a lie, God is sad, and the judge gets to be mad at me. My grandma told me. A small sound came out of Judge Morrison. Not a laugh. Something warmer than a laugh. He covered it with a cough into his fist. That is exactly what it means, sweetheart. Mrs. Price said, Place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Lily did. Her small right hand barely cleared her ear. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Yes, ma'am, I do. You may be seated. She sat. The pink bag stayed on her lap. Her feet did not reach the floor. They swung once, just once, and then she stopped them. A little soldier at attention again. Mr. Chen approached. He did not go to the podium. He walked right up to the witness box and rested his hand on the wooden rail. And he smiled at her the way a grandfather smiles, because he was a grandfather. And I had seen the pictures on his desk the first time I sat down in his office back in August. Hello, Miss Lily, he said. Thank you for being so brave. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer them just like you and I practiced. Slow, honest. And if you don't know the answer to something, you just say, I don't know. Sir? Is that all right? Yes, sir. Miss Lily, can you tell the court your full name, please? My name is Lily Margaret Mackenzie. I am 7.5 years old. My daddy is Captain Michael Mackenzie, and he is stationed in Germany with the United States Army. My mommy went to heaven last year. I live with my grandpa now, on Sullivan's Island. The courtroom was very quiet. Thank you, Miss Lily. And the lady sitting at that table over there, in the cream-colored blouse. Can you tell the court who she is? Lily turned her head and looked straight at Christine. She did not flinch. She did not blink. That is Mrs. Christine. She married my grandpa after my grandma went to heaven. And the gentleman in the third row, in the gray suit, with the phone in his hand. Do you know who he is? That is Mr. Derrick. He says he is Mrs. Christine's cousin. But that's not true. Patricia Holloway started to rise. Mr. Chen held up one hand, palm out, without turnings around. He kept his eyes on Lily. Miss Lily, how do you know that is not true? Because I heard them talking, sir. You heard them talking. When? Lots of times, sir. Lots and lots of times. I heard them talking when Mrs. Christine thought I was asleep. And I heard them talking on the back porch when they thought I was inside. And I heard them talking in the kitchen when Grandpa was taking his nap. And how did you hear them? Miss Lily. Lily looked at me. Just for a second. She looked at me, and I nodded at her. A small nod. The same nod Mr. Chen had given me an hour earlier. Permission? Confirmation. Go on, baby. Go on. She reached into the pink canvas bag. She lifted Sergeant Buttons out and set him on the wooden rail of the witness box in front of her. Very gentle. Very careful. The way you might set down a tiny living thing. He was a brown bear, well-loved, with one black button eye and one slightly newer button eye that Margaret had sewn back on the summer before she got sick. He wore a small green felt vest that Margaret had stitched together out of an old Marine Corps duty cap, and on the vest was sewn a little patch that read, Sergeant. This is Sergeant Buttons, Lily said. My grandma made him for me. She made him a long time ago, before she got sick. She told me he was a very special bear. She told me he had a secret job. The courtroom did not move. The fluorescent lights hummed. The air conditioner cycled on, then off. Miss Lily, Mr. Chen said, very quietly. What was Sergeant Buttons's secret job? Lily reached behind the bear's vest. She fumbled for a moment with the small Velcro Margaret had sewn under the fabric. The Velcro made a soft, tearing sound. Lily reached inside. She pulled out the small black plastic rectangle, no bigger than a stick of chewing gum, and she held it up so the whole courtroom could see it. His job, she said, was to listen. Patricia Holloway came up out of her chair like a woman who had just sat on a hornet. Objection, Your Honor. Strenuous objection. This is a clear violation of South Carolina wiretapping statutes. A minor child cannot lawfully record private conversations in a private home without the consent of the parties recorded. This evidence is inadmissible. Furthermore, the chain of custody on that device has not been established. The device has not been authenticated, and the recordings have not been. Counsel, Judge Morrison said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through her the way a clean blade cuts through soft pine. Approach the bench, both of you. Now, Mr. Chen and Patricia Holloway walked up to the bench. Judge Morrison leaned forward, and the three of them spoke in low tones for a long time. I could not hear the words. I could see Patricia Holloway's neck turning a slow, blotchy red above the collar of her blouse. I could see Mr. Chen sliding a piece of paper across the bench to the judge. I could see Judge Morrison reading it through his half glasses with a still, unreadable face. I learned later what was on that paper. South Carolina is a one-party consent state. A person who is part of a conversation, or the legal guardian of that person, can lawfully record it. Lily had been present in the rooms where the conversations took place. She was a party. And I, as her court-appointed legal guardian since her mother's passing and her father's deployment, had given written consent in Mr. Chen's office back in September. The paper Mr. Chen slid across the bench was that consent form, dated September the 4th, signed in my own hand on a morning when, thank the good Lord, Christine had been gone all day driving up to a continuing education seminar in Columbia, and I had drunk no coffee at all. Judge Morrison handed the paper back. Objection overruled. The court finds the recordings admissible under Section 17-30 of the South Carolina Code. Mr. Chen, you may proceed. Counsel, Return to your tables. Patricia Holloway walked back to her table with her jaw set. Christine was no longer dabbing her eyes. She was very still. Her hands were folded on the table in front of her, and her knuckles had gone white. Mr. Chen returned to the witness box. He held a small black laptop computer under his arm. He set it on the table in front of Lily, plugged a thin cable into the recorder, and clicked twice. A list of audio files appeared on the screen, hundreds of them, each one labeled with a date and a time, in Lily's careful 7-year-old handwriting, transcribed by an investigator into a printed log that Mr. Chen now placed on the judge's bench. Your Honor, Mr. Chen said, with the court's permission, I would like to play 3 brief excerpts. The first is dated April the 11th, 2024. The second is dated June the 3rd. The third is dated August the 19th. They run approximately 1 minute each. Proceed. He clicked the file. A small speaker on the laptop crackled to life, and then I heard my own kitchen. I heard the hum of the refrigerator I had bought in 2015. I heard the tick of the wall clock Margaret had hung over the breakfast table in 1994. I heard the soft hiss of the espresso machine, and then I heard Christine's voice. The real one. The one without the honey. The one I had never been allowed to hear. Did you get the script refilled? Yeah, 2 more bottles. The pharmacist didn't even look at me twice. That was Derek. His voice was lazy, casual. The way a man sounds when he is pouring himself a second cup of coffee in a kitchen he believes belongs to him. How many milligrams are you putting in? I bumped it to 4 this week. He was getting too sharp on the weekends, asking questions about the bank statements. Jesus, Derek, don't bump it that fast. You'll put him in the hospital, and then we'll have doctors looking at his blood. Relax, sweetheart. I know what I'm doing. My uncle was on these for 15 years before his stroke. 4 milligrams in a strong coffee is nothing. He'll just feel a little foggy, a little tired, a little easier to manage. A pause. The sound of a coffee cup being set down on a counter. How long until we can file? 6 months, maybe 8. We need the diary entries to look natural. I've been backdating them like you showed me. The handwriting expert won't catch it. And once the petition goes through, we sell the Sullivan's Island house. We cash out the retirement, and we are gone. Costa Rica by Christmas. And the kid, a laugh. Derek's laugh. The same lazy, casual laugh. What kid send her back to her daddy in Germany? Old man can ship her off in a duffel bag for all I care. She's not our problem. The recording ended with a soft click. The courtroom did not breathe. I felt Lily's eyes on me from the witness box. I felt Mr. Chen's hand on my shoulder, although he had not moved from where he stood. I felt the wooden bench beneath me, solid and real, and I felt the 18 months of fog lift off my brain the way a morning fog lifts off the marsh when the sun finally tops the live oaks. 4 milligrams in a strong coffee to make me easier to manage. My granddaughter. Send her back to her daddy. My granddaughter, who had come to live with me 20 months ago because her mother, my daughter-in-law Sarah, had died of a brain aneurysm in February of 2023 while making breakfast in their kitchen in Mount Pleasant. My granddaughter, whose father was Captain Michael Mackenzie, my son, deployed to Ramstein Air Base in Germany. My granddaughter, who had needed her grandpa, and I had needed her, and Margaret, dying Margaret, had told her 7-year-old self to listen carefully, because Grandpa was going to need help. I put my face in my hands. I did not cry. Not yet. The crying would come later, in the truck, in the driveway, in the dark. What came now was something colder than crying. It was the same thing that had come over me in a rice paddy outside Da Nang in 1970, the morning my best friend Tommy Reyes died. It was a stillness, a quiet, terrible stillness. And underneath that stillness, very faint, very far away, the first low note of something I had not felt in 54 years. Rage. Mr. Chen gave the courtroom a long moment. He did not rush. He understood, the way old country preachers understand, that some silences need to be sat in before the next word is spoken. He poured a small paper cup of water from the pitcher on the witness table and handed it to Lily. She drank half of it. She set it down. She nodded at him. "Your Honor," he said. "With the court's permission, the second excerpt, dated June the 3rd, 2024. Approximately 50 seconds. Proceed." He clicked the file. The kitchen came back. The refrigerator hum. The wall clock tick. And this time Christine's voice came first. "He almost caught me yesterday. He found a pill on the floor by the coffee maker. I told him it was one of my migraine tablets. He believed it. But Derek, I am telling you, we need to move faster." "How much faster?" "I want the petition filed by September. I want the house on the market by Thanksgiving. I cannot keep playing the loving wife for another year. I cannot keep sleeping in that bed. He smells like an old man. He smells like Bengay and Old Spice and that awful drugstore aftershave Margaret used to buy him." A soft laugh. "Derek's. You knew what you signed up for, sweetheart. So I signed up for the money. I did not sign up for the smell. 2 more months. 3 at the outside. Then you can burn every piece of clothing the man owns. You can scrub the house with bleach. We will be on a beach by New Year's, and you will never have to smell another retired plumber as long as you live. And the doctor's appointment on Friday, keep it. Get the paperwork. We will need it for the petition. And Christine, listen to me. When you go in there, you cry. You hear me? You cry the whole time. The doctor needs to put in the chart that you are emotionally distressed about your husband's decline. Every piece of paper has to point the same direction." "I know how to cry, Derek." "I know you do, sweetheart." The recording ended. I had thought, after the first clip, that I had felt the bottom of it, that I had hit the floor of the well. I had not. There was a deeper floor. There is always a deeper floor. He smells like an old man. I had bought that Old Spice in 1984. Margaret had liked it. She used to lean her face into my neck and breathe it in on Sunday mornings before church. For 40 years, that bottle had meant my wife's cheek against my skin. And now it meant a woman in a cream-colored blouse laughing about my smell with a man young enough to be her son. I did not move. I could not move. Lily, in the witness box, had her hands folded very tight on top of Sergeant Button's. She was looking at the floor. Mr. Chen waited. Then he spoke, soft and even, the way you speak to a horse that has been spooked. "Your Honor, the third excerpt, dated August the 19th, approximately 1 minute and 10 seconds. I would ask the court's particular attention to the final 20 seconds. Proceed, Mr. Chen." The third clip began. This one was not in the kitchen. This one was on the back porch. I could hear the marsh frogs in the background. I could hear the soft slap of the screen door. It was an evening recording. Late summer. The cicadas were singing. "Did you take the test?" This morning, 2 lines, strong ones, a long silence, then Derek again. His voice had lost its lazy edge for the first time on any of the recordings. Christine, Jesus Christ. Are you sure? I took 3 of them. All 3 were positive. I am about 7 weeks along. The doctor confirmed it yesterday. Whose is it? A small, sharp sound. A slap, maybe. A hand on a porch rail. Derek, do not ask me a stupid question. The man has not touched me in 18 months. He cannot. He had the surgery in 2019. He told me about it on our second date. It is yours. It has always been yours. Christ. 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 Stop saying that. This is good. This is better than good. This is perfect. Listen to me. Do you understand what this means? If I tell him I am pregnant, he is going to want to believe it. An old man, a sick old man, told he is going to be a father one more time. He will sign anything. He will hand me the keys to the kingdom. We will not even need the petition. We will not even need the diary. He will set up the trust himself. He will write me into the will himself. He will do the work for us. And after, I have a miscarriage. Tragic. Devastating. He blames himself. He grieves. He drinks the coffee. The fog comes back. And in 6 months I file the petition with the trust already in my name. And Derek, we are gone. Do you understand me? We are gone. A pause. The cicadas. The marsh frogs. Then Derek's voice. Very low. You are a piece of work, Christine. That is why you love me. Yeah, I guess it is. The recording ended. The courtroom made a sound. It was not a gasp. It was the soft, collective intake of breath of about 40 people remembering at the same time that they had lungs. I turned my head slowly to the petitioner's table. Christine was no longer sitting straight. She had folded forward at the waist, just slightly, her forehead resting on her interlaced fingers, the way a woman prays. She was not praying. Her shoulders were shaking, but not with grief. With something closer to a laugh that had gone wrong on the way up, Mr. Chen was already speaking. His voice was very calm. Your Honor, the respondent will now move to introduce certified medical records from Roper St. Francis Hospital, dated March the 12th, 2019, documenting that Mr. Robert Allen Mackenzie underwent a bilateral vasectomy at the age of 71. The procedure was confirmed successful by post-operative analysis. Mr. Mackenzie has been medically sterile for 5.5 years. He paused. Whoever is carrying that woman's child, Your Honor, it is not my client. Christine sat up. She sat up slow, the way a snake comes up off a warm rock when it has finally decided the time for stillness is over. Her hands came down off her forehead. She placed them flat on the table in front of her. She looked at Mr. Chen. She looked at Judge Morrison. She looked at me. And then she smiled. I had been married to this woman for 3 years and 4 months. I had eaten breakfast across the table from her 1,207 mornings. I had never once seen her smile the way she smiled in that courtroom. It was a smile with no warmth in it at all. It was the kind of smile you see on a stray dog that has cornered a rabbit. The corners of her mouth lifted, but her eyes did not lift with them. Her eyes stayed flat and pale, the color of old sea glass left too long in the sun, and they were fixed on me. You should have just drunk the coffee. Bob, she said, She said it out loud, in open court, on the record. With a court reporter typing every syllable, Patricia Holloway shot up out of her chair so fast, she knocked her water glass over. Christine. Christine, do not say another word. Do not. Oh, shut up. Patricia, you knew. You knew from the day I walked into your office. Patricia Holloway sat back down. She sat back down hard. The color drained out of her face the way water drains out of a cracked bucket. And I watched a 42-year-old attorney from one of the most respected family law firms on the Charleston Peninsula realize, in real time, that her career had just ended in a single sentence. Judge Morrison's gavel came down. Once. Hard. Counsel will control her client. Mrs. Mackenzie, you will remain silent until you are addressed. Bailiff, secure the rear doors of this courtroom. Nobody leaves this room until I say so. The bailiff moved. He was a heavy-set black gentleman in his 50s, and he moved with the easy, unhurried authority of a man who had been doing this work for 30 years. He stepped to the back of the courtroom and took up a position in front of the double doors. His hand rested on his belt. Not on his weapon, just on his belt. But the message was clear enough. Derek was already on his feet. He had stood up the moment Christine spoke. He had his phone in one hand and a leather portfolio in the other. And he was halfway down the aisle toward the doors before he saw the bailiff standing in front of them. He stopped. He looked left. He looked right. He turned around to look at Christine, and Christine did not look back at him. She was still looking at me. She was still smiling that flat, empty smile. Sir, the bailiff said, in a calm, pleasant voice. Please return to your seat. The judge has not dismissed this proceeding. Derek did not return to his seat. Derek took 2 more steps toward the door. Sir, I will not ask you again. Mr. Chen rose. His voice cut clean across the courtroom. Your Honor, the respondent moves the court to detain Mr. Derek Caldwell as a material witness and a flight risk. The recordings introduced into evidence establish his direct participation in a felony conspiracy involving the administration of controlled substances to my client without consent. We further move for an emergency forensic hold on the residence at 119 Atlantic Avenue, Sullivan's Island, pending the arrival of the Charleston County Sheriff's Department. Granted on both counts. Bailiff, take Mr. Caldwell into custody pending the arrival of the sheriff's deputies. Counsel, get me a sheriff's lieutenant on the phone in my chambers within 10 minutes. Oh yes, Your Honor. The bailiff walked toward Derek. He did not hurry. He did not need to. Derek looked at the door. He looked at the bailiff. He looked at Christine one more time, and this time something passed across his face that I had not yet seen on him. It was the look of a man who has just realized that the woman he has been working with for the last several years is not going to take the fall with him. She is going to take it alone if she has to. And she is going to put the whole of it on his head if she can. He set the leather portfolio down on the gallery rail. He put his hands behind his back. He did not say a word. The bailiff put his hand on Derek's elbow and walked him to a wooden chair at the side of the courtroom, beside the jury box. He did not handcuff him. He did not need to. Derek sat. He stared at the floor. Judge Morrison turned his attention back to the petitioner's table. Counsel for the petitioner. Do you wish to make any statement at this time? Patricia Holloway stood up. Her hands were shaking. She had to grip the edge of the table to steady them. When she spoke, her voice came out thinner than I had heard it all day. Your Honor, given the developments of the last several minutes, the petitioner's counsel respectfully requests permission to withdraw from this matter. Effective immediately. Denied. You will remain as counsel of record until the close of these proceedings, at which time you will accompany your client to the Charleston County Detention Center, where I have no doubt the Sheriff's Department will have a number of questions for you as well. Sit down. Mrs. Holloway. She sat down. Mr. Chen turned to me. He spoke very quietly, just to me, so that nobody else could hear. Bob, I need you to listen to me carefully. We are about to enter the most important hour of this entire case. The Sheriff's Department is going to be here in 20 minutes. Before they arrive, I need to introduce one more piece of evidence into this record. A piece of evidence that we have been holding back. A piece of evidence about Margaret. I felt the bench shift beneath me. Or maybe it was the room. Or maybe it was me. What about Margaret? I said. Mr. Chen looked at me with the eyes of a man who has been carrying something heavy for a long time and is finally about to set it down. Bob, he said, I do not believe your wife died of pancreatic cancer. The room narrowed down to a tunnel. I have heard combat veterans talk about this. The way the edges of your vision go soft and gray, and the only thing left is the man in front of you and the thing he is saying. That is what happened to me in courtroom 3 at 3:05 on a Tuesday afternoon in October. Margaret died of cancer, I said. My voice did not sound like mine. Stage 4 pancreatic. Dr. Patel confirmed it. Roper, St. Francis. November 9th, 2020. Mr. Chen nodded. He nodded the way a doctor nods when he is about to tell you something you do not want to hear. She had cancer. Bob. That part is true. The cancer was real. The diagnosis was real. But Bob, listen to me. People with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, on the protocol Margaret was on, they had a median survival window in 2020 of approximately 11 to 14 months from diagnosis. Margaret was diagnosed in early September of 2020. She passed on November the 9th of that same year. Bob, that is 9 weeks, not 11 months. 9 weeks. The room narrowed further. I could not feel my hands. She was sick. She was real sick. She lost weight. She lost weight, Bob, because she stopped being able to keep food down. Starting the second week of October, the same week Christine Wayland began showing up at that hospice with mason jars of homemade soup and lavender sachets and hand-knitted blankets. The same week, I closed my eyes. Bob, Mr. Chen said, very quietly. In March of this year, with your written permission, we petitioned the Charleston County Coroner for an exhumation and re-examination of Mrs. Mackenzie's remains. The exhumation was conducted on April the 18th. The forensic toxicology was completed in June. I have been holding those results for 4 months, waiting for the right moment to bring them into a courtroom. That moment, Bob, is now. I opened my eyes. I do not know what showed in my face. Whatever it was, it made Mr. Chen put his hand on my shoulder again and hold it there a long second before he turned and addressed the bench. Your Honor, the respondent moves to introduce Respondent's Exhibit 47, sealed forensic toxicology report from the Medical University of South Carolina, dated June the 11th, 2024, regarding the remains of Margaret Ann Mackenzie, deceased November the 9th, 2020. Bring it forward, Mr. Chen, He walked the sealed envelope to the bench. The judge opened it. He read it. He read it twice. He set it down on the desk in front of him, very gently, and he removed his half-glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose for what felt like a long time. Mr. Chen, please summarize the findings for the record. Your Honor, the toxicology panel detected the presence of cyclobenzaprine, oxycodone, and lorazepam in the hair follicles of the deceased, at concentrations substantially in excess of what would have been prescribed by Dr. Patel's hospice protocol. The forensic examiner has concluded, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that Mrs. Mackenzie received multiple doses of unprescribed medication during the final 3 weeks of her life. The examiner has further concluded that the cumulative respiratory depression caused by these unprescribed doses, layered on top of her existing hospice protocol, was sufficient to cause death by acute respiratory failure approximately 6 to 9 months earlier than her underlying disease would have. He paused. Margaret Mackenzie did not die of cancer, Your Honor. She died of an overdose administered to her, in her hospice bed, by someone with regular and unsupervised access to her medications and her person. The court reporter had stopped typing. I do not remember standing up. I do not remember the bench rocking back behind me. I do not remember Lily in the witness box, putting both her small hands flat against her cheeks and starting to cry. Although I have seen the courtroom footage since, and I know that is what she did. I do not remember Mr. Chen's arm coming across my chest like a seatbelt. I do not remember my own voice. What I remember is Christine, at the petitioner's table, 8 feet away from me, sitting with that same flat smile on her face. Christine, who had brought my dying wife homemade soup. Christine, who had sung Amazing Grace at her bedside. Christine, who had stood in our kitchen on the afternoon of Margaret's funeral and washed the casserole dishes, in the same kitchen where Margaret had rolled out biscuit dough for 49 years. Christine, wearing Margaret's gold cross around her neck at this very moment. Christine, who had killed her so she could have me, who had killed her so she could have the house on Sullivan's Island and the retirement account at Edward Jones, and the truck and the boat and the savings bonds Margaret and I had bought every Christmas since 1974. I do not know what I said. I am told by Mr. Chen and by the court reporter's transcript that what I said was, You did this. I am told I said it 3 times. I am told my voice was very quiet. The bailiff was at my side instantly. So was the second deputy who had come in through the back door. They did not grab me. They did not have to. Mr. Chen's arm was already across my chest, and his other hand was on my forearm, and he was saying my name very low and steady, the way a man talks to a horse in a burning barn. Bob! Bob! Sit down! Sit down! Bob! Not here! Not like this! Sit down! For Lily? Sit down for Lily. Lily! The word reached me. I do not know if anything else would have. I turned my head and I looked at the witness box, and my granddaughter was sitting there with tears running down her face and both hands pressed against her cheeks. And she was looking at me with Margaret's eyes. I sat down. I sat down because Margaret's eyes told me to. I do not remember the next 10 minutes very well. I remember Mr. Chen pouring me a paper cup of water. I remember Lily climbing down off the witness box without anyone telling her to and walking the length of the courtroom, past the lawyers, past the bailiff, past Christine, and climbing up into my lap and putting her arms around my neck. I remember the warm weight of her against my chest. I remember her small hand on the back of my head. I remember her whispering into my ear. Grandma says you can sit down now. Grandpa. She says you did good. She says we did good. I remember Judge Morrison saying, very quietly, we will take a 15-minute recess. Counsel will remain in the courtroom. Bailiff. The doors stay locked. The recess came and went. I do not remember it. When the gavel came down again, the sheriff's lieutenant had arrived and was standing at the back of the room with 2 deputies. Derek was still in the wooden chair beside the jury box. He had not moved. He had not spoken. Christine was still sitting at the petitioner's table. She had stopped smiling. The flat, sea-glass eyes were watching the door now, the way an animal watches the only exit from a closing pen. Mr. Chen rose. Your Honor, before the court adjourns these proceedings for the day, the respondent would respectfully request the opportunity to introduce one final witness. The testimony will be brief, approximately 20 minutes. The witness has been waiting in the witness room since this morning. Proceed, Mr. Chen. The respondent calls Mr. Andrew Whitlock to the stand. A man rose from the back of the gallery. I had not noticed him before. He was in his early 60s, tall and thin, wearing a brown corduroy jacket and round wire-rimmed glasses. He carried a leather satchel. He walked to the witness box with the slow, careful gait of a man who has spent 40 years bent over old books in archives that smell of dust and lemon polish. He took the oath. He sat down. Mr. Whitlock, would you state your full name and occupation for the record? My name is Andrew Marshall Whitlock. I am a board-certified forensic genealogist. I hold a doctorate in historical demography from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I have been certified by the Board for Certification of Genealogists since 1987. I have been retained as an expert witness in 31 cases involving inheritance disputes, identity fraud, and probate contests, including 4 cases in federal court. Mr. Whitlock, were you retained by my firm in July of this year to investigate the family backgrounds of Mrs. Christine Wayland and Mr. Derek Caldwell? I was. What did you find, sir? Mr. Whitlock opened his leather satchel. He took out a thick manila folder. He set the folder on the rail of the witness box. He took out a single sheet of paper, a printed family tree, and he held it up so the court could see. Your Honor, the woman calling herself Christine Wayland was born Constance Marie Caldwell in Asheville, North Carolina, on March the 22nd, 1986. She legally changed her name to Christine Wayland in 2017, 3 years before she met Mr. Mackenzie at the hospice. Her mother was a woman named Linda Caldwell, born 1964, deceased 2008. Linda Caldwell had 1 son out of wedlock when she was 16 years old. That son was named Raymond Caldwell, born 1980. Raymond Caldwell is Christine's older half-brother. He is currently serving a 22-year sentence at Lieber Correctional Institution for the 1998 murder of a man named Walter Henley in Spartanburg, South Carolina. The courtroom was very still. Mr. Whitlock, Mr. Chen said. Please continue. Raymond Caldwell fathered a child of his own when he was 18 years old. A son. That son was placed for adoption at birth in 1998 through a private agency in Greenville. The adoptive parents named the child Derek Allen Caldwell, retaining the biological surname at the birth mother's request. Derek Caldwell, the gentleman seated in this courtroom, is the biological son of Raymond Caldwell, which makes Derek Caldwell, by direct lineage, the biological nephew of the woman calling herself Christine Wayland. A small sound came out of someone in the gallery. I think it was the court reporter. I am not sure. Mr. Whitlock, did you confirm this relationship through DNA testing? I did. With consent of both parties, hair samples collected from the bathroom of the residence at 119 Atlantic Avenue, Sullivan's Island, were submitted to a CODIS-accredited laboratory in Raleigh. The kinship analysis returned a probability of biological aunt and nephew relationship of greater than 99.98%. The report is dated September the 3rd, 2025, and is included in the folder before me. He paused. He looked over his wire-rimmed glasses at the petitioner's table. In addition, Your Honor, 3 of the audio recordings entered into evidence this afternoon contain explicit verbal acknowledgement of a sexual relationship between the witness and Mr. Caldwell. I have also reviewed text messages obtained under subpoena from the cellular carrier of Mr. Caldwell, dating back to 2021, which corroborate the same. Whatever the legal definition of incest may be in the state of South Carolina, Your Honor, it is my professional opinion that this relationship meets the biological definition by a significant margin. I felt Lily's hand go very still against my chest. I looked at Christine. She was not looking at me anymore. She was not looking at Mr. Whitlock either. She was looking at the table in front of her, at her own hands folded there, the gold cross still around her neck. And as I watched her, something small and quiet broke inside her face. Not a sob, not a tear, just a small breaking, the way a fine porcelain cup can develop a single hairline crack without making any sound at all. I think she had genuinely loved Derek. In whatever twisted, withered, calculating way her heart could still love anything. I think, in that moment, she finally understood what she had done, and what she had been, and what she was. And I think she understood that she had been alone in it for a long time. Mr. Chen sat down beside me. The courtroom doors opened, and the sheriff's lieutenant began walking forward. The sheriff's lieutenant was a woman. I had not realized that from across the room. Her name tag read, Lieutenant Vasquez, and she walked up the center aisle with the unhurried purpose of a person who had arrested a great many people in her career and had never once needed to raise her voice to do it. She stopped at the petitioner's table. Constance Marie Caldwell, she said, also known as Christine Wayland. Stand up, please. Christine stood, slowly, almost politely. She placed her hands in front of her, wrists together, the way a woman does who has watched enough television to know what is about to happen and has decided to make it look graceful. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, administration of controlled substances without consent, criminal solicitation, and conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse. Additional charges are pending. You have the right to remain silent. The lieutenant fastened the handcuffs. The metal made a small, quiet sound, The same small sound my torque wrench used to make in 1978 when I tightened a fitting under a kitchen sink. A working sound. A finishing sound. Lieutenant Vasquez turned her head. "Mr. Derek Allen Caldwell, stand up, sir." Derek stood. He did not look graceful. He looked smaller than he had looked all day. His shoulders had come down. His chin had come down. He held his wrists out the way a boy holds his wrists out when he has been caught stealing. The lieutenant cuffed him. She read him his rights. She turned both of them toward the center aisle, and Christine stopped. Right in front of my row. The deputies on either side of her did not pull her along. They let her have the moment. I do not know why. Maybe they understood that some things have to be finished before they can be ended. She looked at me. "I did love you a little, Bob," she said. "At the very beginning. Maybe 2 weeks. Before I understood you. Before I understood any of it. I just want you to know that. So you do not spend the rest of your life thinking none of it was real." I looked at her. I held Lily a little tighter against my chest. "Christine," I said, and my voice was steadier than I expected it to be. "You killed my wife. You poisoned me for 18 months. You used my granddaughter as a piece of furniture in a house you were planning to sell. Whatever 2 weeks you think you had, ma'am, you can keep them. I do not want them." She looked at me a moment longer. Then she nodded. Very small, almost to herself. The way a person nods when she has finally been told the answer to a question she had been carrying for a long time. The deputies walked her out. Derek followed. Patricia Holloway was escorted out behind them by a third deputy I had not noticed arrive. The courtroom doors swung shut. Judge Morrison sat very still for a moment. Then he removed his half-glasses and folded them and set them on the bench beside the toxicology report. "Mr. Mackenzie," he said. I stood. Lily stood with me, her hand in mine. "Mr. Mackenzie, in 27 years on this bench, I have never said what I am about to say. I am sorry. I am sorry for what was done to you. I am sorry for what was done to your wife. I am sorry that the systems we have built in this state were not enough to catch this woman before she did what she did. Your granddaughter is the bravest witness I have ever seen sit in that chair. You raise her well, sir. You raise her in the memory of the woman who taught her how to listen." "Yes, Your Honor." "The petition for guardianship is denied with prejudice. Costs to the petitioner, the marital home, the retirement accounts, and all jointly held assets revert in full to Mr. Mackenzie. Free and clear. This matter is adjourned." The gavel came down. Soft this time. The way a man closes a door behind him when there is a child sleeping in the next room. The drive to Magnolia Cemetery took 22 minutes. Lily rode in the passenger seat of my Ford F-150, holding Sergeant Buttons on her lap, both small hands folded over his green felt vest. Neither of us spoke. The sun was low over the Ashley River when we turned in through the wrought iron gates. The Spanish moss hung off the live oaks like old gray lace, and the gravel of the cemetery road crunched under the tires the same way it had crunched on the morning we buried Margaret. 4 years and 11 months ago. I parked under the magnolia tree she had picked out herself, the summer before she got sick. She had walked me out here on a Sunday afternoon in June of 2020, and she had pointed at this exact spot, and she had said, "Bob, when the time comes, I want to be right here, where I can hear the river." I had told her she was being morbid. She had told me she was being practical. She had been right. She had always been right. Lily and I walked across the grass, her small hand in my big one. Margaret's stone was a simple gray granite marker, low and rectangular, the kind Margaret would have wanted. Margaret Ann Mackenzie, beloved wife, beloved mother, beloved grandmother, 1949 to 2020. And underneath, the verse she had picked herself, from the 23rd Psalm. He restoreth my soul. I knelt down. My knees did not like it. They had not liked kneeling for 10 years. But I knelt anyway. Lily knelt beside me. She set sergeant buttons on the grass at the foot of the stone, very gentle, like a soldier laying down a wreath. "Margaret," I said. My voice broke. I waited. I tried again. "Margaret, I know now. I know what she did. I know what they did. I am sorry it took me so long. I am sorry I did not see her for what she was. I am so sorry. Sweetheart." The wind moved through the live oaks. The Spanish moss lifted. Just a little. Lily put her small hand on my back. "Grandma says she forgives you. Grandpa, she says she always has." Spring came late to Sullivan's Island that year. The winter had been a hard one. Harder than any I could remember since the freeze of 1989. The pipes at the back of the house had burst on Christmas Eve, and I had spent the morning of December the 25th on my back under the kitchen sink, in long johns and a flannel shirt, with Lily holding the flashlight for me and reading me the directions out loud from a sheet of notebook paper I had written for her the night before. She read each step twice. She was very serious about it. When I finally got the new fitting tight and turned the water back on, she put both her small hands on her hips and said, "Grandpa, I think you might have a future in plumbing." I laughed for the first time in 2 months. That was the moment, kneeling on the kitchen floor on Christmas morning, that I realized I was going to be all right, not healed. I was not healed. I would not be healed for a long time, and parts of me would never be healed, and I had made my peace with that. But all right. Functional, present, a man who could fix a pipe and laugh at a 7-year-old's joke and feel the cold tile under his knees and know, in some quiet place behind his sternum, that he was still here. The toxicologists at the medical university had put me on a slow protocol to clear the benzodiazepines out of my system. It had taken 11 weeks. The first 3 were the worst. I shook. I sweated. I did not sleep. My son Michael flew home from Ramstein Air Base on emergency family leave, and he sat in the recliner across from my bed for 9 straight nights, drinking coffee out of Margaret's old yellow mug and reading old Louis L'Amour paperbacks under the lamp. He did not say much. He did not have to. He was there. By the end of February, my hands had stopped trembling. By the middle of March, I could remember the name of every Marine in my squad again, in the order they had stood in formation on the morning we shipped out of Camp Pendleton in August of 1969. I could do the crossword in the Post and Courier in 11 minutes flat. The fog was gone. The world had edges again. Christine pleaded out in late January. 25 years. No parole. The state had offered her a deal in exchange for testimony against Derek and against Patricia Holloway, and she had taken it. Derek went to trial in March and was convicted on all counts. 42 years. He will be 84 years old before he sees the outside of a federal prison, and the actuarial tables suggest he will not. Patricia Holloway was disbarred, pled to 2 felony counts, and is serving 5 years at a minimum security facility in Aiken. The federal investigators are still working the wider case. Mr. Whitlock has been a consulting witness in 2 other states. Apparently, the scheme Christine ran on me was a refinement of one she had attempted twice before, on 2 different elderly widowers in 2 different states, both of whom had died of what their families had been told were natural causes. The exhumations are pending. I do not let myself think about that too long. There is a thing a man can know and a thing a man can carry, and the two are not always the same. Lily started 2nd grade in January at Sullivan's Island Elementary. Her teacher is a young woman named Mrs. Coleman, who has red hair and freckles and a soft Charleston accent, and who came to our house in February with a casserole and a handwritten letter saying that in 12 years of teaching she had never had a student with a more open heart than my granddaughter. I keep that letter in the top drawer of Margaret's old writing desk, in the bedroom, where I see it every morning when I take out my socks. Michael extended his leave through April. He sleeps in the upstairs guest room. He has been teaching Lily how to play chess on Margaret's old wooden board. He has been helping me sort through Margaret's things, which I had not been able to face for 4.5 years, and which Christine had not been allowed to touch. Boxes of letters, boxes of Christmas ornaments, boxes of photographs from before Michael was born. We have been going slow. There is no hurry. The boxes have waited 4.5 years. They will wait as long as we need. We have also begun, the 2 of us, the harder work of sorting through Sarah's things, my daughter-in-law, Lily's mother, who passed in February of 2023. After the funeral, Michael had simply locked the door of their house in Mount Pleasant and shipped Sarah's belongings to Sullivan's Island in cardboard boxes, and those boxes had sat in my garage for almost 2 years, untouched. Michael could not bear to open them. I could not bear to ask. But this April, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, he carried 2 of them into the dining room, and he sat down at Margaret's table, and he began. Sarah's wedding album. Sarah's nursing scrubs from the cardiac unit at East Cooper Medical Center. The leather-bound journal she had been keeping for Lily, with a handwritten letter inside it for Lily to read on her 16th birthday. Michael read that letter at the dining room table with his shoulders shaking, and I sat across from him and did not say a word, because there are some kinds of grief a father can only witness, not touch. It was a Saturday morning in early April when Lily came down the stairs with Sergeant Buttons under her arm. I was at the kitchen table, drinking my coffee. I had made it myself, in the old percolator Margaret and I bought at a yard sale in 1979. The espresso machine Michael had given me for Christmas in 2022 had been put on the curb the morning after Christine's arrest, and the garbage truck had carried it away, and I had not missed it for a single second since. Lily climbed up into the chair across from me. She set Sergeant Buttons on the table between us. She had a serious look on her face, the kind of look a person gets when they have been carrying something for a long time and have finally decided they are ready to set it down. Grandpa, she said, I have to give you something. I should have given it to you a long time ago. But Grandma said to wait until you were ready. She said I would know when. I think today is the day." She turned Sergeant Buttons over in her small hands. She undid the Velcro under the green felt vest, the same Velcro that had hidden the Bluetooth recorder for 18 months. She reached 2 fingers inside, deeper than the recorder had ever gone, into a small pocket I had not known was there. She pulled out a folded square of yellowed paper. It was a letter. The paper was old. The fold was deep. The handwriting on the outside was Margaret's. It said, in her tidy cursive, "For my Bob. To be opened when the storm is over." I set down my coffee. My hands had begun to shake again. Not from the benzodiazepines, from something else. Grandma wrote it the summer before she went to the hospital, Lily said. She read it to me. She made me practice keeping it safe. She said the storm would come. She said you would know when it was over. Grandpa, I think the storm is over now. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time before I opened it. The coffee in my mug went cold. The sun moved across the floor from the east window toward the center of the room. A blue jay landed on the feeder Margaret had hung from the live oak in the side yard in 2004, and he ate his fill of sunflower seeds and flew away again, and I still had not opened the letter. Lily did not rush me. She sat across from me with her hands folded on top of Sergeant Buttons, the way she had folded them on top of the witness box 6 months before. And she waited. She had inherited that from Margaret. The quiet patience of a woman who knows that some things have to come in their own time. Finally, I picked up the letter. I turned it over in my hands. The paper had the soft, faintly powdery feel that old paper gets when it has lived a long time in a warm, dry place. The fold was sharp. The handwriting on the outside was Margaret's tidy schoolteacher cursive, the same hand that had written the grocery list on the refrigerator every Sunday night for 49 years. I unfolded it. There were 3 pages, front and back, written in pencil. I could see the small, soft places where the lead had grown blunt, and she had stopped to sharpen it. I could see 2 places near the bottom of the second page where the pencil had skipped because her hand had begun to shake. The date at the top of the first page was August the 14th, 2020, 3 weeks before her diagnosis. 1 week after the day, I would later figure out that she had first noticed the weight loss and the pain in her side, and the strange, knowing tiredness she had not yet told me about. I read it out loud. Lily wanted to hear it. So did I. My dear Bob, if you are reading this, then the storm I have been seeing on the horizon has come and gone, and our Lily has done what I asked her to do. Bless her brave little heart. I am writing this on a Friday afternoon while you are out on the boat with Tom. And I have about 3 hours before you come home smelling like fish and pluff mud. So I will keep it short. I have not been to the doctor yet. I will go on Monday. But Bob, I know what is in me. I have known since the first week of July. I am 71 years old, and I have been a woman in this body a long time. And I know the difference between a bad summer and the beginning of the end. I am not afraid. I have had a beautiful life with you. I want you to know that first, before anything else. 49 years, 1 son, 1 granddaughter, 1 good house. one good business, one good marriage. I would not change a single year of it. Not even the hard years. Maybe especially not the hard years. But Bob, I am writing this letter because I have been watching something, and I do not like what I see. The young woman at the hospice, the volunteer, Christine. She does not know me yet. She has not started coming to my room yet. She will. I have seen her in the hallway. I have seen her watching the old men. I have seen the way she reads the visitor logs at the front desk when she thinks no one is looking. I have seen her smile at Mr. Whitfield down the hall, who lost his wife last month, and I have seen the look on her face when his daughter is not in the room. And Bob, my love, I know that look. I have seen it before. My own mother saw it on a woman in 1963, and that woman ate my father's pension for breakfast and left him to die alone in a rental house in Walterboro. I know that look. Bob, she is going to come for you when I am gone. Not right away. She is patient. She will wait. She will be kind. She will be sweet. She will bring you soup, and she will sing at my funeral, and she will wash the casserole dishes in our kitchen. And one day, 8 months or a year from now, she will be in our bed. I am sorry. I cannot stop this from where I am going. But I can do 2 things. The first thing is this letter. I am leaving it inside Sergeant Button's, in a small pocket I have sewn behind his vest. I will leave it for Lily to find when she is old enough to understand. Right now she is 3 years old, and she does not understand much. But she will. I have told Michael and Sarah that when Lily is 6, they must take Sergeant Buttons out of the chest where I am putting him, and they must give him back to her. By then she will be old enough. By then she will be ready to listen. The second thing is Lily herself. When she is 6, when she has Sergeant Buttons back. I have left instructions with Sarah, my daughter-in-law, who is a good woman and a wise one. Sarah knows what to do. Sarah will teach Lily how to listen, how to remember, how to be still in a room with a person who is lying. There is a long line of women in my family who learned how to be witnesses, going back to a great-great-grandmother who testified against a Confederate captain in 1867. Sarah was a nurse before she was a mother. She knows how to watch. She will teach our girl. And if anything should happen to Sarah, may God forbid, then the job falls to you, Bob, and to Tom Henderson, and to whoever else is still standing. Bob, my darling, when the storm has passed, and you are sitting at our kitchen table reading this with our granddaughter, I want you to do 3 things for me. Forgive yourself. You will want to spend the rest of your life kicking yourself for not seeing what I saw. Do not. You could not have seen it. Men who have been loved their whole lives by good women cannot see what bad women look like. That is not a weakness. That is a grace. Live. Do not become an old man in a chair. Get up. Walk the beach. Take Lily fishing. Eat the shrimp and grits at Poe's Tavern on Friday nights. Call Tom. Go to church. Vote. Fix a neighbor's leaky faucet for free. Be useful. Be present. Be here and love her. our granddaughter, with everything that is left in you. She is going to remember the woman who taught her how to listen. You make sure she remembers the man who taught her how to live. I will see you again, Bob. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Yours, always and ever, Margaret. I set the letter down on the table. Lily had her chin in her hands. She was watching me very calmly, the way Margaret used to watch me when I came in off the boat. Sarah taught me. Grandpa, she said. Mommy did. Before she went to heaven, she told me Grandma left her instructions. She gave me Sergeant Buttons back on my 6th birthday. She said it was time. I started to cry then. Not the way I had cried at the funeral. Not the way I had cried in the truck on the night of the trial. The way a man cries when he has finally been forgiven for something he did not know he needed to be forgiven for. It is May now. Late afternoon. I am sitting on a bench Michael built me last weekend, out on the dunes behind the house, looking at the Atlantic. Lily is down at the waterline with Sergeant Buttons in one hand and a red plastic bucket in the other. She is 8 years old today. She is hunting for shark teeth. She has found 3 already this week. The wind is coming off the water warm and slow, the way it does in the low country in the spring, and the pelicans are flying south to north in a long, lazy line. And somewhere down the beach, a man is throwing a tennis ball into the surf for a yellow Labrador. I have been thinking, the last few weeks, about what it is I have learned. A man my age does not have all the time in the world to figure out lessons, and the ones I have, I would like to pass on. Margaret asked me to be useful. Mr. Chen, the morning we cleaned out his office files in February, told me that a story like mine is a kind of medicine, and that there are old men out there right now drinking the wrong coffee in the wrong kitchen, and that maybe, if I told the story plain, one of them might set the cup down before he drank the last sip. I have thought about that a great deal. I think Mr. Chen was right. So here are the things I have learned. 5 of them. The rest I will keep for myself. The first thing is this: trust your gut. Even when your gut is the only thing in the room telling you the truth. I knew something was wrong in my house for at least a year before I admitted it. I felt it in the mornings when the coffee tasted just a shade too bitter. I felt it on the weekends when my head cleared and the world had edges again. I felt it the day I noticed the pill bottles had disappeared from the bathroom cabinet without a conversation. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was being ungrateful. I told myself I was being an old man. I was not. I was being a witness. The body knows. The body always knows. When your body tells you something is wrong, you listen to it. Even when the woman across the breakfast table is smiling at you. Especially then. The second thing is this: loneliness is a doorway, and bad people know where it is. I lost Margaret in November of 2020, and by the spring of 2021, I would have let almost anyone into that house just to stop the silence from echoing back at me. That is not weakness. That is what grief does to a human being. But brothers and sisters, if you are reading this in your own kitchen tonight, and you have lost the love of your life, please hear me. Take your time. Take more time than you think you need. Take a year. Take 2 years. Build a life that has people in it before you build a life that has a person in it. Lean on your children. Lean on your church. Lean on your old service buddies. Lean on the woman at the post office who has known you for 30 years. Build the village back up around you first. Then, and only then, decide who you want inside your front door. The third thing is this: children see more than we give them credit for. Lily was 6 years old when Margaret died, and she saw things in our house that I, a grown man with 40 years of marriage and 2 tours in Vietnam under my belt, could not see. She saw the way Christine looked at me when I was not looking back. She saw the way Christine handled the coffee cup. She saw the way Christine and Derek brushed hands when they thought no one was in the room. Children are the most honest witnesses on earth, because they have not yet been trained out of believing what their own eyes tell them. If a child in your life is uneasy about a person, do not dismiss it. Sit down at the kitchen table and ask the child what they have seen. Then believe them. The fourth thing is this: the people who love you tell you the truth, even when it is hard. The people who are using you tell you what you want to hear. Christine never disagreed with me. Not once in 3 years. She thought every joke I told was funny. She thought every opinion I held was correct. She thought every shirt I bought looked handsome on me. Margaret, God rest her, told me when I was wrong about 6 times a week for 44 years. She told me my fishing hat looked ridiculous. She told me I was too hard on Michael. She told me I drank too much beer in 1992 and that I needed to cut it back to 2 on a Friday night. Which I did. That was love. The other thing was a transaction. If the person at your table never pushes back, friend, you are not in a marriage. You are in a long con. The fifth thing is this, and it is the hardest: forgive yourself. Margaret wrote it in her letter, and I am going to write it here too. You were loved by a good woman for most of your life. That love taught you what love looks like. It did not teach you what predators look like. That is not your failure. That is a kind of grace you carried. When the storm comes, do not spend the rest of your years kicking yourself for not seeing it sooner. Get up. Walk the beach. Take a child fishing. Fix a neighbor's leaky faucet for free. Be useful. Be present. Be here. Down at the waterline, Lily has found something. She is holding it up. She is waving it at me. A tooth, by the look of it. A big one. She is running toward the dunes with Sergeant Buttons under her arm and her bare feet kicking up little sprays of wet sand. I stand up off the bench. My knees do not like it. They have not liked anything for 10 years. But I stand up anyway, and I open my arms, and my granddaughter runs into them. Grandpa, look, look. It's the biggest one yet. Let me see, baby. She drops it in my open palm. A shark's tooth, black as river stone, 1.25 inches long, perfect at the edges, 40 million years old. Give or take, I close my hand around it. The wind comes off the Atlantic warm and slow. We are still here. If you have made it this far with me, friend, I want to thank you for listening. If this story put a name to something you have been feeling in your own kitchen, please do me one favor. Call your son. Call your daughter. Call the friend you have not spoken to since Easter. Tell them you love them. Tell them what you have been noticing. Tell them out loud. The body knows. The witnesses are listening. And the storm, if it is coming, can be seen by anyone who is brave enough to keep their eyes open. Margaret saw it. Lily heard it. Sergeant Buttons remembered it. And I am still here to tell it. Good night, brothers. Good night, sisters. Good night from Sullivan.